this topic, I honestly had no idea what I was getting into. I just thought it was an interesting question, what was the most expensive recall ever? I honestly had no idea how bad this was. Like, it started with, oh no, bad airbags. And it ended with an explosion so big it flattened entire blocks of a town in South Texas. This story is insane, and it might actually impact you. So stick around, because we're going to talk about the Qatar airbag scandal, the biggest product recall in history. In 2009, two people were picking up kids from football practice in Oklahoma City. While tooling around the parking lot looking for an exit, one of them got distracted, and they wound up having a little fender bender. One of them got out of the car, probably annoyed. He was probably going to be late for dinner now. God knows how much this repair is going to cost, all that. The other one didn't get out of her car. She just sat there. So he got out his insurance information, got out of his car, walked over to the driver's side of the other car, kind of wondering what her deal was. And when he got there, what he saw was a woman bleeding all over the place. Her face looked like she'd been shot with a shotgun. And next to her in the passenger seat was her younger brother crying and holding her, screaming for help. Like, imagine being that guy, You probably would think that she got shot or something. And maybe the shot happened before the accident, because there's no way that the accident could have caused that. It was a tiny little fender bender. In fact, maybe that's what caused the accident, was her getting shot. Suddenly, this whole thing became something else entirely. The driver's name was Ashley Parham, an 18-year-old cheerleader from Oklahoma City, and within minutes, she was pronounced dead on the scene. The medical examiner report said that something had sliced open her carotid artery, causing her to bleed out and pass away. They also thought maybe she was shot, but the metal that they pulled out of her neck, it wasn't a bullet, it was shrapnel. One look at the bloody airbag gave them the clue they needed. Because there were holes in the airbag, but the holes didn't come from the outside, they came from the inside. On that day, Ashley Parham became the first death in the Takata airbag scandal. The Takata Corporation began in 1933 as a textile manufacturer in Japan, making parachutes during World War II. They eventually shifted to making seatbelts in the early 1950s. So they became a bit of a name around car safety equipment, and as airbags became more popular, they moved into making them. Airbags started popping up in cars, literally, around the 1970s, but the first designs go all the way back to the 1950s. An inventor and engineer named John W. Hetrick patented the first ever prototype for airbags in 1953. Yeah, it was kind of inspired by a crash that he had the previous year. He was riding around Newport, Pennsylvania with his wife and daughter, and he swerved to miss a rock and went into a ditch. Nobody was hurt, but it did give him an idea. What if he could invent something that would come out and prevent somebody from smashing into the steering wheel? And the first airbag was born. By the 1970s, airbags were increasingly offered as an option by car companies like GM and Ford. And in the beginning, they all kind of made their own airbags. But in the 80s, several companies like Takata stepped up and started mass-producing them third-party. Congress passed the Intermodal Surface Transportation Efficiency Act in 1991, which required all new cars and light trucks to come with airbags on both the passenger and the driver's side. It became a mandatory feature in 1998. So by the turn of the 2000s, Takata was putting their airbags in tens of millions of cars. They were one of the top airbag manufacturers on Earth. They served dozens of different car brands. They were huge. Here's how airbags work. They're basically made up of three parts. Bag, which is made of thin nylon and folds into the steering wheel and passenger side dashboard, as well as a seat in the doors. The crash sensor, located in the steering column, that has an accelerometer built into it. And it's usually programmed to trigger the inflation system around 30 to 35 miles an hour. The third part, last but not least, is an inflator. And this is the tricky part. The inflator has to walk a delicate tightrope. It's got to fill the airbag extremely fast, no matter a millisecond. That bag has to fly out at like 200 miles an hour. But it's flying right at your face, so it can't be too forceful. You get a concussion just from the airbag. There are, by the way, tiny holes in the bag, so it gives way a little bit when you hit it, and also so it can completely deflate after the accident. You're not just stuck with a giant bag in front of your face. But the point is, it has to be like right in that sweet spot, explosive but soft. Also, fairly important, the gas that it fills that airbag with has to be non-toxic. Like, no sense preventing a head injury if you're just going to nerf your lungs with chlorine. So they needed something that would be explosive and produce an inert gas like, say, nitrogen. The earliest airbags did this with a mixture of sodium azide and potassium nitrate. Turns out, though, that the exhaust that they produce actually is a bit toxic. So they replaced that later on with a compound called tetrazole, but that was a lot more expensive. So in the 90s, Takata started buying up companies basically to obtain their patents. They were looking for something that could do the same job as tetrazole, but cheaper. One of those companies happened to be a rocket research facility in Washington that worked with ammonium nitrate. Takata's VP of inflator development basically retweaked one of those patents that he got, and he created what he called a high gas yield non-azide gas generant, and pushed to use ammonium nitrate in airbags. Now, anybody in here who follows space stuff even just a little bit is well aware of ammonium nitrate. It's used in a lot of solid rocket boosters, including the ones on the Space Shuttle and SLS. And that's basically what this inflation system is. It's like a tiny little solid rocket booster that just pushes exhaust out one end and inflates a bag. And on paper, they sound pretty good. It's relatively stable, it's way less expensive, and it's more powerful. More powerful means you can make smaller inflators. That's less resources per unit, less cost to ship per unit, no toxic gases. Win-win-win. So, what are the disadvantages of using ammonium nitrate? Well,
will launch, my God, is there an explosion?
Yeah, when I said relatively stable earlier, the word relatively was carrying a lot of weight. In fact, it was the cause of the worst industrial accident in U.S. history. In Texas City, Texas in 1947, a guy on a ship docked at port just kind of flung a cigarette, and that cigarette started a fire next to 2,300 tons of ammonium nitrate. They were packaged in paper bags. The blast that it created actually set off a chain reaction, blowing up a ship next to it that was also carrying a ton of ammonium nitrate. Petroleum plants and refineries caught fire for miles in every direction, and it actually knocked people to the ground on Galveston Island, 10 miles away. In the end, that one tossed cigarette killed over 500 people. So let's put that in our steering wheels. And look, the engineers at the Qatar weren't stupid. They knew full well about the explosive nature of ammonium nitrate. The executives at the Qatar knew about it because they had a quality control team of engineers telling them everything it is. One of them even got injured when an inflator exploded during a car fire test. It turns out that was actually ammonium nitrate's big flaw. Like it couldn't handle extreme temperatures. And even mild temperature swings cause problems. Ammonium nitrate becomes particularly unstable when moisture gets into it. And swings in temperature and humidity can make condensation form, and that can break down the fuel. The whole point of solid fuel is that it burns evenly, so it goes in the direction you want, all out the exhaust, right? Fill out the bag. And unstable fuel that's been exposed to moisture, it doesn't burn evenly. And the force of it can go in directions you don't want, sometimes ripping the housing apart and sending that out as shrapnel. And Takata's solution to the moisture problem? Desiccants. Yeah, you know those little desiccant packs that they put in packages to absorb the moisture? They always say, do not eat. Yeah, those. By the way, they put do not eat on there because people apparently are still